Welcome back to Kaptivate's Pivot and Thrive series. I'm Kat Kemp, Vice President for Communications and Stakeholder Engagement. Today, I'm with Francella Ochillo, Tech Policy Strategist, Movement Builder, and Thought Leader. Francella, as you look around at our communities, how do you describe the challenge we're facing?
I think that the challenge isn't just in our communities. I think the challenge is really thinking about like where we sit in community and thinking about like what's our responsibility, whether it's to do something, sometimes it's to sit still, sometimes it's to listen, sometimes it's to act. And I think that when we think about, I want to acknowledge that in this moment where it feels like there's a lot of things are changing. The way we think about um, our country, the way we take care of each other, how we show up in our communities, all those things, these ideas are being tested and are changing. And there are some people who are really excited about the change, and there are some people who are struggling with the change. But either way, I think it's an important time for us to ask questions about just our personal responsibility in this, and also thinking about how we are contributing to new ideas because we are going to have to reimagine how we do all of the things that we do.
Yeah, I like what you said about having to reimagine and that things can't be the way that they had been. So, what will it take to pivot?
I think that I should probably start by saying that um, I don't know that I have a perfect answer for that. I think all the time, like this weekend, I was with my nephew, and he's 10, and I think little kids see things in a very different way. I think almost like just as a reminder that sometimes we just don't have the answer, and that's okay. But when I think about what does pivoting look like in this moment, at least for me, it means thinking about like where I've been, not necessarily being in a hurry to go to the next place, but to be thinking about what was I supposed to learn and what is the thing that I'm supposed to practice right now. Because I think that sometimes when we're pivoting, you think of this idea of like something ended, I have to quickly turn and do this next thing. And I think that sometimes we forget that, if you want to be a master of anything, you have to practice it. You have to practice it over and over and over again. I think that's like the oh my gosh, that's the 10,000 rule from a book, The Outliers. 10,000 hours, you can be a master of anything, right? And I think that like right now, that means like practicing whatever's your shot, whatever's your stroke, like practice that thing so that when you move on to the next thing, you show up ready, you show up wholly, you show up fully, and really excited about being really good at the thing that you're going to do next.
I love that. And so then as we think about thriving, what will it look like to thrive?
Oh, goodness. I think that we should set our eyes on small victories sometimes. Um, because the truth is that think about if you think about, I think about when I moved to DC back in 2007, when I moved onto 3rd Street in LaDroit Park. I mean, oh my gosh, DC was a different place. And I remember, I just graduated from law school. I was taking bar review classes at GW. I didn't have a job. I remember that I had a car, and I actually still used to keep my car parked because once I got a good spot in the neighborhood, I couldn't move my car all week.
Mhm.
But I remember a time that when I would take the bus, I used to make sure that I took the bus within 2 hours to make sure I didn't have to pay for it twice. And I remember thinking that type of strategizing, like what did it look like to thrive in that moment was, oh, just get a job, right? And then you get the job, and then you get a better job, and then you get another job, and then it's an even better job. And the thing is, there's never, ever a time that you ever think you made it, ever. It doesn't matter how high you go, it doesn't matter where you are, you always are striving for something else. And I think one thing when we think about, ambitious people, when we think about this idea of thriving, like there is no final destination, right? But I do think that we should make time and be intentional about having small things that bring us joy, little delights. Like make sure like every single week I have something on my calendar that is fun, that doesn't have anything to do with work. There's no networking, there's no anything. It's just joy. And it doesn't matter if that's going to the playground with your family or going out to brunch with your friends or whatever's the thing. I think that we have to make sure that we make time for those small things, because if you actually genuinely get to enjoy those things, all of the other stuff is much more meaningful.
As we think about all these, like the challenge and the pivot and the thrive, are there things that how does it work to do this together, like in community? What does that look like?
Well, I do work with community groups, and I think that has been a combination of a joy and also a learning experience, because I work with community groups to make sure that I am giving them agency so that they know how to meet with policymakers, how do they elevate the things that they're working on, how do they craft stories that are that actually get attention, that they can speak for themselves. Um, when I think about in this moment about how we work together on those things, though, I think probably the first thing is to show up with humility. I think that there's a posture very often, and maybe that comes from a very DC centric idea of when we work on policy, this idea that we know best, we know how to do this, we know the policymaking process, we know how this is going to move through a proceeding, docket, or whatever. And we rarely make room for the expertise of people who are in local test beds, in communities. They not only bear the brunt of our bad decisions, but they also have really good ideas. And just because they don't share filings doesn't mean that they don't want to be a part of the policymaking process. So
Mhm.
I do think when I think of my work in terms of making sure that we're thinking about crafting tech policies that are going to really shape for generations how we interact, what we have access to, what does digital citizenship look like, what does it look like to have a digital identity, like all of those things. The work that we're doing right now is going to set that up. And people are either going to say we did a really great job, or they're going to be thinking about how to dismantle it. And I want to make sure that we're doing a really good job. So even if we're not sure how we work together, the point is that we're going to have to work together. I think when you are thinking about this moment, maybe the goal of this project, um, one thing I don't want to forget is that when we're thinking about the people who are watching this on LinkedIn, and you're thinking about the people who might be in uh, moments where they have to question whether or not, if you have a job, you're like, should I stay? Should I move? Should I try something new? If you don't have a job, you feel vulnerable. It's complicated. It's hard. There are lots of people in that in between stage where they might be underemployed because it's better than not having a job. All these question marks. And when you're thinking about those people, one thing that I will say is that I don't think we make enough room for joy and wonder and imagination in our work.
Mm.
And I think that if we intentionally like made space for, I wonder if this could work this way. I wonder if I could ask this person. I wonder if we tried this, would this work? And that's something that we very often encourage in entities is a big entity. We don't do that as individuals. Like we'll pay a company to do research and development, try things over and over again. Even if they fail, we'll give them more investments to try it again. But when it comes to individuals, it's a very high stakes proposition because you're like, I tried that job, it didn't really work. I didn't have a mentor, I didn't get this right. And we stop practicing, and that's a thing that kids do very well. And I think that that's something that, just like when you think about how kids play with Legos or do things where they just have to keep trying it, find joy in it, try again. I think that's something that when we're thinking about our work, if we did a little bit more of that, it wouldn't feel so heavy when you have to change, because when you change, that becomes an opportunity. And so I think that's one thing that I hope comes up as a theme, because I just feel like we're at a place where um, everyone is at a different type of inflection point, even if they're not saying that out loud. But I do think that it's also important for us to say, to meet that moment with humility, and to also be okay with the fact that, like, what we were doing before, maybe it is time to try something new. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm willing to try.